What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of SSPN Live. I'm Jude. That's Ethan. Apologies for apologies for about the 10-minute delay there. I was getting off work, so just was running a little bit behind. But we're here now, Ethan, and man, we had some fun stuff to watch this weekend. As much as there was some controversy, at least regarding the Spurs, which we'll get into. We will be recapping All-Star Weekend, which was, of course, over the course of this past weekend. And then we will be diving into the final 30 games for the San Antonio Spurs. Me and Ethan have really kind of given our thoughts on that, like team defense, rebounding. Those are really the main two things that we've, beat a dead horse on. But there are some other things that I think we can talk about when it comes to these final 30 games that I came up with that we'll dive into to just preview the rest of the season for you guys post All-Star break. JG in the chat says a lot to talk about, and let's dive into it, Ethan. We'll start off with Friday night. Stephon Castle, future All-Star. I'm sure this will not be his final All-Star weekend nor his final dunk contest. And I guess technically it might not be his final Rising Stars challenge either, because he could play next year. But we saw Wemby sit out this season when he could have technically played as well. So if the Spurs get another big rookie with how that draft is looking and how the Hawks pick is going, maybe Stephon will sit out next year and let them take the shine. But regardless of that, Stephon Castle's team winning the whole tournament. He won Rising Stars MVP. He hit the game winner in the opening game on a pull-up jumper. He assisted on the game winner in the second game. And we'll get into the Sunday as well, but he put on a pretty solid performance in all of the games that he played with this team, even in the All-Star game as well.
Yeah, for sure. Really impressed with what he was able to do. And for me, Jude, it was the maturity for which that he approached the game. That's what separated him from the rest of his teammates, in my opinion, was the poise to really take control down the stretch of these games and be the primary facilitator and catalyst to that offense. And there's a viral moment that was out there on Twitter and stuff of him mic'd up against Matas Buzelis, where he was like, they told me that I had to stop, or no, not Mata, Dick, Grady Dick. There's like, they told me to make you stop scoring, so I'm sorry, it's over. And he was like, well, it was fun while it lasted. But I think what most impressed me was the way that legends were talking about him throughout the Rising Stars game, and even in the All-Star game where he played the Shaq's OGs team, where they were just really, really impressed with his overall game, and we're talking about how he's like the next guy up for the Spurs. He's going to be probably the second best player next to Victor Wembanyama, and that was a common theme throughout the weekend. Which it's one thing for you and I to say stuff like that, Jude, or for guys that making draft profiles, but it's something different when it's Vince Carter, Candace Parker, Shaq, guys that actually know what it takes to be there.
Dudes who played.
Yeah, exactly. That's what meant the most to me about Stephon this weekend.
Yeah, I think, we kind of talked about this All-Star weekend potentially being kind of a coming out party for Stephon Castle, just in terms of the rest of the league. And I think kind of leading into it, just with a couple of ESPN games that we did post games for, but, just also more national TV games and national coverage in general with Victor Wembanyama being on the team, that people had kind of, became more aware of Stephon and obviously his rise throughout the season, the tear that he's been on as of late, as well as how he's performed in the starting lineup, contributes to the way that he's viewed as well, of course. I mean, and of course, you have to credit all the good stuff and the progression that we've been seeing from the beginning of the season and the growth that we've continued to see. I mean, look at his shooting. I could go on and on. We could make a podcast on Stephon Castle and what we've seen from him this season, and how, his ceiling, it just feels like it's continued to grow and grow the more that we watch him. But still, with that being said, as much as there were people that were more aware to him, this was really like his first national stage. Like, the NBA fan base is watching this. They're watching the dunk contest, and they got to see him in the All-Star tournament as well, because they advanced. And I think, when you pair that with him being next to Wemby, I was thinking about this today at work, actually, Ethan, and I agreed with you throughout the entire time that we had this thought process. But we always referred to Devin Vassell as potentially being Victor Wembanyama's Robin to Batman. And I think at this point of the season. I know it's only his rookie year, but when it comes to them being drafted in back-to-back drafts, as well as the potential of Stephon Castle, he really is. This was him emerging as that Robin. Everybody sees him as that guy next to Wemby, is kind of more in that guard position. Another potential all-star who's going to grow next to him, and obviously De'Aaron Fox. You could make an
Right.
argument for him being Robin as well, but I kind of view him as like the Avengers, or like whatever the DC version of that is, where you're just bringing in Superman or like Black Panther. You know what I mean? Like you're
Mm,
bringing in an already established superhero, where Steph and Wemby are they're both in San Antonio or Gotham, if you will. That's
mm.
my superhero analogy.
I think that is a completely valid take, Jude. And it doesn't help that that Devin has played kind of lackluster this year, but
Uh-huh.
Stephon Castle has the perfect personality for San Antonio. His confidence has been there since day one. It's only gotten bigger and bigger. He's not afraid of the moment, even when he misses shots or commits silly turnovers. He doesn't do so quietly. It's loud
Mm-hmm.
and it's confidently, and I'd rather that be the case because he'll just learn from those mistakes. But he'll continue to play aggressive, play downhill, and the rest of his game will iron out because he's taking the right shots, he's getting to
Uh-huh.
the right spots, he's making the right play. It's just the small little minutia details that every rookie
Right.
messes up. That's kind of getting to him, but down the line, 100%, I think he's the Robin to Wemby's Batman.
Yeah. And again, just to reiterate, Ethan, when you were saying that was Devin, I was agreeing. So
Yeah, oh, I
we
know what
have
you meant.
we
Yeah.
have both kind of came to that conclusion as we've seen the way that Stephon Castle has played this year, man. And it just makes me this whole weekend, and what we saw from him this weekend just makes me even more excited for the future of the Spurs, and also excited for future All-Star weekends
Mm,
as well, because I think that the Spurs will be heavily involved.
for sure. And we haven't even mentioned his dunk contest performance yet, Jude.
Right, right. And we're going to get to that, but we're not going to jump the gun, because
Okay.
there is something that happened right before that, and that was the skills challenge. And
Oh,
of course,
right.
there was something that specifically involved the Spurs about that. So we got to talk about that there. Obviously, CP3 and Victor Wembanyama were both on the same team in the
Mm,
skills challenge. I know this is like the least important or the least
yeah.
attractive of all of these, so it's not that big of a deal, but we might as well mention it because the Spurs were essentially just they were doing everything in their power to win. If you guys didn't see it, when there were potential times in the skills challenge where you're not making a pass, or having to dribble through something, there are shots that you could take, but instead of really taking shots, the Spurs just kind of threw the balls up as fast as they could, in order to make it through the obstacles as fast as possible. But after the Spurs made it through with the fastest time of, I believe, 47.9 seconds,
Yeah.
um, there was a disqualification. And I actually didn't see it happen when it was live, Ethan, because I'll be honest, on that Saturday night, I was watching, but I was watching two screens at once because I was watching the UFC as
Mm,
well. And I had the UFC's volume on. So while I watched the Spurs, like I saw how quick Wemby was doing it, and I was watching the times because I did want to pay attention. I didn't have the volume on for that. So
mm.
I didn't hear when they got disqualified. So I'm like seeing all the other ones. Like I saw the Cavs go, they got like a minute, and then everybody advances and the Spurs aren't there. And I'm like, what's going on? They had the fastest time. And then of course I go on Twitter, I get some texts, and I get
Mhm.
caught up on everything. Um, and yeah, they were disqualified because of their shot attempts potentially not being shot attempts, according to the people who were in attendance. So obviously, in my opinion, I think they should have counted. Obviously, we're biased. But when I was watching the Cavs, like it was a little bit more exaggerated, but they weren't trying to make the shots. Like it wasn't that different. Anyways, what was your take on this?
I've had the same thought in the past couple of years about like because there's no penalty for missing your shots, right? You get 3, and if you shoot all 3 and you miss all 3, then you just move on, right? But they don't add like 10 seconds to
Mm-hmm.
your time. So I've always thought like why even shoot it? Like just I never thought about just throwing the ball. I think what Chris and Victor did was a little too much, if I'm
Right.
being honest. Like I get it because they didn't even attempt to shoot it. They just
Mm-hmm.
threw the ball forward, not even at the rim. Had they done like just like really quick like fake shots, like pick it up, shoot it, pick it up, shoot it, pick it up, shoot it, and don't even look at the
Mm-hmm.
rim, I think they might have been fine. But it was like the blatant disrespect
Yeah.
to the event that I think got them disqualified, uh, which sucks. I wish they would have just let them redo it because
They were just trying to
clearly,
win, all right?
yeah, I mean, yeah, but also clearly, Chris Paul and Victor were under the assumption that they were within the rules, so that
Yeah.
they wouldn't have just done that. Like Chris Paul wouldn't have just done that. He's too smart. He would have read the rule book,
Well,
which apparently they said that someone told him you can do that, and then later, of course, they brought the guy out with the rules, and he was like, "No, you're disqualified," and they were a little upset about that. We don't know more detail than that, but I wish they would have at least let them go again because I think they would have been able to compete even if they had taken the shots, right?
yeah, 100%. I actually saw something today. Now, this was on social media, so who knows how true this is, but I mean, it seemed pretty true when I saw it. And again, asterisk with that because it's social
Seems true.
media. Right. You could say so many things with that not be the case. But anyways, the point is I saw something today that Victor and Chris Paul went up to like the rule officials beforehand and were like, "Hey, would this be in the rules?" Like basically the way that they were going to do
Mhm.
it. And they were told yes, but I don't think that the person who told them yes was the same person who
No.
made the decision. So they probably just saw it differently. Um, I get it to an extent, but if I was in that position, and maybe this is just because I'm a Spurs fan, I wouldn't have disqualified them.
No, I wouldn't have either.
This here it is. Alex7173 says Wemby asked an NBA executive if he would do that or if he could do that. That's what I was referring to. That's what I saw today online. So yeah, it
Mm.
wasn't just me just remembering that out of making it up in my head.
They need to redo this entire challenge if you're asking me. I
Yeah,
think it used to be
you're
way
right.
cooler back when we were kids, when Tony Parker was doing it. It was like and Kobe was doing it and
I had
LeBron.
the same thought. The first thing you took the words out of my mouth. I was like, when Tony did it, it was cool. And of course, we remember that because we're Spurs fans. But still, it was a little different. Like even when I was mentioning, I was trying to describe it earlier, and I was mentioning like dribbling through things. They really didn't even have to do that as much as they
Mhm.
used to.
It was way harder back in the day, I feel like. It's way easier now. Uh, but regardless, I would have liked to have seen them actually compete. It's kinda sad that we only got to see the disqualification round.
Right. Right. I would have liked to see them in the next round, regardless of if they win or not. It would have just been cool to see them advance and maybe see Wemby and CP3 get a win.
Yep.
But let's move on to the next thing, which was the dunk contest. So back to Stephon Castle. Obviously, the big headline coming from this is Mac McClung
Yeah.
winning 3 in a row. But still, I think Stephon gave him a pretty good run for his money. I think there's an argument that you could make that even the first dunk should have been a 50. And regardless, I think he gave Mac McClung some comp. I think this is probably the most. Maybe I could be talking out of my behind here and misremembering the past 2 years, and maybe I just didn't pay as much attention because the Spurs weren't as involved. But it
Mm.
seems like this was the most comp that Mac has had over the past 3 years.
I think so too.
Okay,
I don't quite remember the last 2 years that much,
that's
but
why
I
I
do.
was like asterisk. I'm not sure.
But honestly, your first point about Stephon Castle's first dunk being a 50, really, in our opinion, I agree with that. I think what hurt Stephon was his lack of flair. Like Mac McClung was basically like a circus act as well as an amazing dunker, right? Did I cut out there? Can you hear me? Because you froze, Jude.
Okay, I'm back. I literally just got back. Hello,
Okay, did you
hello.
hear any of that? Hello,
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Hello. Okay, now I can. I'm like a little bit behind. I just had a connection drop.
You're good. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes,
Okay, yeah,
yes.
there's a slight delay, but I'll start over with what I said. I'm saying,
Okay.
I agree with your first point. Castle, his first dunk should have been a 50. I think what hurt him most was that he had very little flair. He just went out there and did some crazy cool dunks, but in all honesty, um, my guy was basically a circus act, Mac McClung. Like he had all the props, he had the car, he had the spinning thing, and we texted about it back and forth a little bit. Honestly, the spinning guy dunk with the two balls, I didn't think was that impressive. Like I really thought they were glazing, bro, like a lot because him spinning doesn't change the dunk at all. And we've seen guys dunk 2 balls, and it's not like the ball was way away from the rim. It was literally right in front of the rim.
Mhm.
All he had to do was touch it, and it went in. So I didn't think that needed to be a 50. I thought Steph's first dunk was definitely a 50. That was basically Vince Carter's dunk, maybe a little less lift, but he cupped it, and he cocked it way further back than
Mhm.
Vince Carter did. And then Steph's last dunk, they got like a 48 or 49 that East Bay through
Mhm.
the net. That's gotta be a 50. Like, I know he missed a couple attempts, but it's within the rules. You're allowed to
Mhm.
do that. So, was the dunk a 50 or was the dunk not a 50? He hit it. He did it exactly how he should have done it. And I have never seen that dunk before. So I think that East Bay definitely deserved a 50. And I'm not saying don't give Mac a 50, but make them go a little bit
Mhm.
further because I feel like it was kind of anticlimactic the way that it finished.
Okay, so I had a little bit more connection issues there, so I'm gonna do my best to just respond to the dunk contest
Okay.
overall here. But main point, I agree. In the final round, I think all of them should have been 50s. So I think we should have just gone
Yeah.
to that final round. On your circus point, I've ruminated on this a little bit more because when we were texting when this happened, like this the two-hand dunk, that wasn't over the car, but the car definitely is, like, that adds to the circus act, kinda like you said. I'm not trying to say it's not impressive, but if he does the same dunk without the car, is it, are we viewing it the same? You know what I mean? So I definitely get your point there. And then with the two-handed dunks, like, off rip, I thought that was really cool too. Didn't Aaron Gordon do that? Like,
He,
okay.
he
See,
did
that's what
something
I
very similar.
See, but that's just like in the moment. I'm watching it on the Saturday night. I'm like, oh, that is pretty dope. You know what I mean? But then today I'm at work and I'm thinking about this for the show. And I'm remembering we texted. I was like, I thought it was pretty cool, and you were like, I didn't think it was that crazy. But then I'm remembering, okay, that has been done before. And as much as it's always cool to see somebody dunk two basketballs at once, like you said, it's just like his hands, they weren't that far away. You know what I mean? You just put them both in there. I mean, shout out to his vertical, but like you said, grabbing a ball from coming out of a basket underneath the basket, putting it underneath your legs, like with enough vertical to still dunk the ball before you fall down, that's way more impressive to me than, that first one. And when I texted you last night, I was like, I think they're pretty even. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, actually, now that I think about it more, and I'm not just like watching it on my TV, and enjoying my Saturday night, um, I definitely get the arguments. And then when it comes to the second one, that was my favorite dunk of the night. The most impressive dunk for me. I mean, I really like the East Bay one. I don't want to. I think I just said how I thought that was super dope and super impressive. But for me personally, on the night, the final dunk for Stefan was the most impressive because to be able to put it behind you and hold it with your offhand, like we know he's right-handed. I understand
Yeah.
they're NBA players. They're gonna have more, they may not be ambidextrous, but they're going to have more control. You know what I mean? Just whenever it comes to dribbling and all the drills that they do. But still, holding the ball in your offhand that's not your main hand and dunking it like backwards, not even looking at the basket while you're in a 360 behind the back. Like that was the craziest dunk of the night for me. But also, I'm not surprised that Mac won off of just the optics.
Yeah, he had the hype, he had the props, he had the effect of playing with the crowd. Like, you gotta give Guy credit. He knows how to work a crowd for sure. And that's just not Steph's personality. So in that way, I get it. And Mac is 6'2" compared to
This
Steph's
was
6'5". Yeah, yeah, Paisan, good
it's
point.
the truth.
He is a white boy. That does factor into it for sure. As much as
Hmm.
we want to say it doesn't, it does. Um, but yeah, I think the only non-50 that Steph put in was his second dunk.
Uh-huh.
They were talking about it. They think he could have gone full 360 on that. It
Hmm.
was one where he basically did a reverse double
Yeah.
clutch kinda. Still really cool, but I
Right.
understand why that wasn't a 50.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. But still, I mean, to see a Spur in the dunk contest finals and
Yeah.
put up a pretty good performance, and get it still it got some reactions out of the crowd as well, like the East Bay one that we were talking about. Like even though he missed, it was built up to it. He was pumped up. The crowd had a reaction. I think the second one as well. I hope it's not his last dunk contest. His last dunk contest, and I don't think it will be either.
No, I hope he does it again because we still haven't seen him jump over Victor Wembanyama.
Yes. I just wonder, see, we were texting about that, right? And there was the tweet that came out that day that was like, maybe Wemby will be involved. Um and when now people, or I heard on the broadcast, they were kind of speculating, but they were like, I don't know if he can jump over him, and I was thinking about it too. I was like, I don't know if he can either. But even if he can't just straight up, jump over a 7'5" dude, as most people can't, I think there's some way that they can get Wemby involved for sure. Like, imagine Wemby holding up a ball. You know
Yeah,
what
that's
I
what you
mean?
gotta do. That's what you
Like
gotta do.
stuff you could do. There's a lot of ways that they could get involved, and I think the main thing is just getting invited again. And I think him being on the same team with Victor definitely helps that case.
100%.
On top of his own talent.
Yeah.
But that pretty much wraps up the dunk contest and leads us into the All-Star game. So or All-Star tournament is probably the better way to put it.
Hmm.
Um, not a ton to go over here, honestly. I'll ask you this. We'll start here. What were your thoughts on Stefan's performance against the NBA dudes? Or not the NBA dudes, but the actual All-Stars.
He played all right. It was clear the difference in
Yeah.
competition between the two, but I like the energy that they played with, and he was still, to me, probably the best player on the team,
Hmm.
as far as initiating offense and creating looks for other guys. So in that way, he was impressive. And then obviously picking up some of these all stars full court, forcing a couple
Hmm.
turnovers, I believe. But in no way did I think that they were going to win against the
Right.
OGs.
Right.
Once they decided to turn it on, it was pretty much wraps. There was nothing the young guys could do.
Yeah, I was just hoping that, you could see him make a couple plays. Like you said, I wasn't expecting them to win. I'm just glad that they won the tournament so that we got to see him play again.
For sure.
And like you said, you got to see the on ball defense of Steph. For rookie Steph Castle, that's probably, what could shine the most in this scenario. Because it's still like they're not going 100%.
Right. Exactly. And actually, I think I have the stats in front of me. Yeah, he lost, but he had 6 points and 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. So
Hmm.
in only 11 minutes, that's pretty impressive. Um, but yeah, Steph Curry, he decided to take control of that one.
A lot of people are talking about this in the comments.
Dude,
Alex
yeah,
7173 just mentioned this, and Robert Ball says crap between the games was longer than the games. Alex said it was a commercial tournament, and the players were criticizing it as well. And to be honest with you, when I didn't even know what it was. I just happened to be making dinner around that time, so I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I'm gonna go make dinner. I'm gonna go put on a YouTube video, and then whenever I see somebody on the court, I'll be back. So I didn't watch any of whatever was on the screen, but I did notice that there was a big gap. And then I saw that alert today on my phone that there were some players who had criticized it. So I definitely agree. Let's speed it up.
I'm extremely happy with how the players played the games.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was way more competitive than the
Yeah.
last, like, 3, probably the most competitive since the year Kobe Bryant died. That was the
Uh-huh.
last time we actually had a competition. Um, and I like the target score. I think that adds a lot to it. I actually like the tournament. I thought the tournament was
Yeah.
pretty cool, but you're right. The shite between games was enough to make me pull my hair out. Kevin Hart needs to be removed from
I didn't even.
all NBA events for the rest of his life. I like Kevin Hart, but he clearly went out there with no script, with no remote idea as to what was going to be said, and then Shaq, Kenny, Ernie, let's keep them to just halftime reports. Let's remove them from play by play commentating. That was disgusting to watch. And then Mr. Beast, I don't know how he got invited, but the NBA marketing team needs to
I did
have some
actually see
serious
that, and I was
reflection.
just like, what is going on?
It was despicable what they were making me watch. Like, Mr. Beast popped up, and I was like, "What?" I literally forgot what I was watching for half a second, and then they had the dumb. I get that Inside the NBA is going away, but not really. TNT's going away. They're coming back.
That's what I was gonna say. Actually, they just yeah.
And then they had, like, a memorial video for him, and, I mean, that was funny, but it took, like, 20 minutes, and it was during a timeout in the final game. I was like, "What is happening?" Like, I forgot the game was even happening. I was like, "Is this timeout or is there a halftime?"
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
but, yeah, I literally the game started, it was, like, 8 o'clock, and I was like my boys were texting me, like, "Can you play COD?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll be on in, like, an hour." 2 hours go by, game's still going on. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know this was gonna take 2 hours, so I had to go to bed. That like, I
Oh
hope
my
Adam Silver
goodness.
watches this podcast because I'm usually a fan of some of the stuff that they do, but this was despicable. This was clearly a money grab, and it's a shame because finally the players did what they were supposed to do, so you can't even blame them.
Oh my goodness, man. As well, you see, you didn't go through this, but as someone with a electronic media degree, TV revenue runs TV.
It does.
And who drives revenue is sports, whether that be the NBA or the NFL. And so I mean, they just put as much ad revenue into those breaks as they could.
You know what? I'm fine with
Oh.
it, Jude. Let's just get rid of Mr. Beast. Let's bring in just Reggie Miller and what's the guy? What's the play-by-plays guy? Is it Mike Breen that does it with
Well,
Reggie?
he's ESPN. No, that's
It's
Kevin Harlan.
Kevin
Kevin Harlan.
Harlan. Just let Kevin Harlan and Reggie do the whole game.
Yes,
Like,
agreed.
we don't need any of
Agreed.
the other stuff. If you wanna have 100 ads, so be it. I get it. But take out Kevin Hart, take out Mr. Beast, and relegate the inside the NBA guys to their corner where they can just do halftime analysis, please.
I'm so glad that during these breaks I just went to go cook, man.
I just assumed
I
they'd
did,
be
like
shorter.
I said, there were a couple things that caught the corner of my eye, but for the most part, all that, I mean, that's just wild. But I that's why I didn't watch it because I figured it would be something like that.
To be honest, Kevin Hart's been insufferable for like 2 years now. So, as soon as they were like, "Welcome, the MC tonight, Kevin Hart," I was like, "Oh my god."
What about the concert though?
What concert? They was like, oh my god, there was a concert. So lame. So lame. Just bring out any other comedian. Bring out like Nate Bargatze, just some
No,
clean.
no. Oh, you misinterpreted me. I'm talking about the rap concert.
Which rap concert?
Leangelo Ball.
Oh, that was even tough to listen to. I love that song, but no one knows that anything more than the chorus. And Leangelo was gasping throughout that thing. That guy couldn't get enough oxygen. He was,
He's probably never performed
yeah,
before.
he's
How
never
long
done it
has he been
live.
recording music?
He kept slipping up on the curse words too, and like saying shit and like almost saying the f word because like clearly he doesn't know how to censor himself yet. That was rough, man.
Oh. Wonderful all-star weekend.
Typical. Just bring back how it used to be for the
It's
love
so
of
funny.
God.
Like you don't have to. They don't have to try this hard, but
No,
they
they
are.
don't. I'm gonna watch it, guys. I'm gonna watch.
Oh my goodness! Wow, I did not expect us to go that long on that, but I think it was honestly warranted.
I had to say it.
I feel you, Ethan. I'm glad that you got to get your frustrations out there.
Thank you.
Adam Silver, you better tune in, bro.
He's got nothing else to do.
Alex7173 says we need to start a a petition for a 1v1, but players would hesitate to play. If they lose, it would make their brand/sponsorship look bad and affect their ego. Sad. I really hope that could become a thing because I also saw an article today that I think the NBA is even floating the idea of pushing it a 1v1 tournament for a $1 million prize.
Ooh.
So if that could happen, I think that would motivate people. I do get what he's saying in the last comment for sure, the people being scared. But if you dangle that Millie,
My
I
boy Cam
think
Reddish about to double his salary.
CD's coming for that bag.
What? Yeah, Wemby might actually win that. Unfortunately, I think. Like if you
Oh,
can't
yo,
double him,
that's
he's just
true.
backing you down.
That took me a second to process. I would love to see Wemby in that. Anyways, but I think that would be a really fun All-Star Weekend activity as well. But I'm pretty sure that wraps up all of our All-Star Weekend talk, Ethan. Any final thoughts on that?
No, sir. I think we pretty much covered it.
Yes, sir. And I think that we also covered all the improvements that they could make as well.
Please
How
hire
about
me.
that? How about that? But we are officially 52 games into the season, Ethan. So there are 30 games left for the San Antonio Spurs. And as I opened up the episode, we're not going to just talk about team defense and rebounding and points in the paint, the things that you guys have already heard us blabber on and on about for the past couple post games. And even before the De'Aaron Fox trade, those were things that we've been talking about. I mean, really, I hate to put it this way, Ethan, but since Zach Collins has been on the team, even though he just got traded in February, we have been talking about the interior. Am I there?
Yeah, you're
Can you
here.
hear me? Okay. It froze a little bit for me, so I got scared after earlier in the episode. But the point is, since he was on the team, the past like 2-3 years, the interior defense and just having a physical presence off the bench in the paint has been something that has been an issue for the Spurs. So we won't get into all of that. But there was something else that we talked about last episode that I wanted to get into. And that's essentially just the idea that the Spurs are doing a soft tank. And, you and I, we're not usually the person to like have tinfoil cappy ideas. We try to stay, in reality and look at it from an objective lens. But when you continue to play Jeremy Sohan off the bench and you continually are in a rebound deficit and a points in the paint deficit, and you just brought in De'Aaron Fox, and that's the thing that's keeping, games against the Wizards close, and then also causing you to, even when like the Celtics game, for example, as much as that was a really bad game for the Spurs, late in the game, they still actually cut it to single digits. And there was some semblance of a chance, but still, you didn't have a chance because at the end of the day, you're at a 10-point deficit in the paint. So with all of that being said, sorry, I was losing my train of thought. Getting back to the soft tank. When you're not putting somebody out there, when you sign Bismack Biyombo and you don't play him, and we'll see what happens with Charles Bassey. Maybe they'll play Charles Bassey when he comes back. But before Charles got hurt, we were playing Charles intermittently, but still the majority of the minutes were Jeremy Sohan at center. So when you continually do that, that makes me start to think about things like this and be like, okay, how would this make sense? Well, it would make sense if you were trying to not make the playoffs and get yourself another lottery pick. And this is something that people, like a couple months ago, blah 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 was one of them, and then there were some others that I'm forgetting as well that suggested this in the comments, that maybe the Spurs are trying to just keep themselves just out of the play-in so that they can have those 2 lottery picks and then be rebuilt and ramped up even more for next season. And here's another aspect that I didn't think about as well. We've all been talking about De'Aaron Fox's ring finger and his pinky finger. If we don't make the playoffs, he can get surgery quicker on that, which we know he needs to get. And there was another aspect of this that I wanted to touch on, but essentially, a soft tank actually explains some of the things that are going on with the Spurs right now. And when you start to actually think of it from that perspective, like I said, it might explain why we're not playing a Bismack Biyombo or, signing a Mo Bamba or a Daniel Theis.
Yeah, I just don't. Maybe I just don't want to believe it, Jude. But I'm afraid I don't have a rebuttal if after All-Star break, actually starting Thursday against the Suns, we don't start to see some significant rotational changes. And maybe it takes a couple of weeks, but I'm going to give it 2 weeks before I make any assertions. Is that the right word?
Yes.
But if after a couple of weeks we're still rolling the same team out there, we have Bismack on another 10-day and he's just sitting on the bench. We have Charles Bassey still injured, and we continue to play Jeremy Sohan at the backup center, and we continue to lose in the same way that we're losing, then I will be 100% behind you and that theory of, the Spurs we just don't want to win. We're trying to get as high of a lottery pick as possible that we can pair next to our Atlanta pick. And maybe we try and package a trade this offseason. Who knows what the end goal is. But if that happens after 2 weeks, then I will be behind that theory.
So here's the other thing, just to dive into that a little bit more. So if we have the higher lottery pick, then obviously that's going to lead to higher draft picks, which even if you want to trade those, that's higher value. Or if you want to draft, obviously higher value as well there. And you could theoretically, if you think from that that lens, you could address your needs that you do need to address better in the offseason. And here's the other key thing about this as well. The Spurs aren't going to win the championship this year. Even if they made a postseason run and they made a postseason push and made it in, and even like won the play in, which I think is a little bit of a stretch, but just for conversation, right? Then they're going to be in a 7 seed or an 8 seed matchup against the Thunder. You
Yeah.
know, like it. And so now with that being said, Ethan, this is another thing I wanted to get into. That's not what I would want to do or prefer to do, but I'm just trying to think of this from a different perspective with what we've seen in these 5 games with De'Aaron Fox.
I get it, and when I remove the emotion from it, I maybe even support it because you're right. We're not going to get into the
That's
second round. We do need more talent on this team if we're looking to become competitive. And having 2 high lottery picks would be really beneficial. But I think as the emotional side of me, the fan, that we've made moves consistent with
yeah,
winning. We traded for De'Aaron Fox, and we in the offseason, we said every word about winning. We brought in CP3, Harrison Barnes. The whole theme of training camp was we're here to compete. We're here to make the playoffs. That's the goal. We want to be in the playoffs. And for there to be a silent tank going on while all that's happening,
literally right after you trade for De'Aaron Fox.
it would really hurt my heart. I get it, but it
Yeah,
hurts me.
that's the thought process that you just had, Ethan. That's the realization that I went through over the weekend. I've kind of ruminated on this since Wednesday because there was a comment that we had. I forget his name, but he was commenting a good bit on our Wednesday post game, and he said, "There's no way that Mitch Johnson like actually doesn't know basketball like this. We have to be like soft tanking or stealth tanking, like Floyd Kizzy says, and Robert Ball says it here. The soft tank is in all caps." Floyd Kizzy said, "I think we may go for 10th, but no higher." I agree there. I think there could be a way where it works out where we're 10th. Now, with you, Ethan, like you just said, my personal opinion, if I was in charge of the Spurs, as much as I look at this, like you said as well, if you look at it from just an objective perspective, if we want like the best situation for the Spurs that we can control for next season, missing the play in and getting a higher draft pick would be better for us. Just if we're being, like you said, take the emotion out of it, take the fan glasses off. That's objectively what would be better for the franchise. Now, putting the fan glasses back on and taking in all of the context of the past couple years, we've been through 2 22-60 seasons. We just traded for De'Aaron Fox. Like, let's go for a push here and at least
Mhm.
try to get some playoff reps, even if we lose in the play-in or even if we do get our butts kicked by our biggest rival, OKC. Like, I've heard people say, I don't want to go in there and get blown out by OKC when we could have a higher draft pick. And to be honest with you, like we just said, I don't disagree with their logic, but this season, I want to go push for the playoffs. My personal opinion of what I want to do if I was RC Buford,
Yeah.
or Mitch Johnson, that's what I want to do. I'm with you there. But if I think about what do I think is actually going on, that's where I'm at right now. Now, if we come out of the All-Star break and there's completely different lineup changes, it's just different rotations. Stefan's in the starting lineup, CP3's coming off the bench, and Charles Bassey is playing. Like, if that's the case, then I'm going to be like, okay, no, we're actually probably trying to make a playoff push. But from what I've seen right now, if we continue to play, center Jeremy off the bench and CP3 and De'Aaron Fox in the starting lineup, and like I said, the rebounding and the points in the paint thing, if that continues to happen and we just continue to go with that, I refused. It's like I was very frustrated, and you're not able to see the forest through the trees sometimes when you're just caught up in it. But Mitch Johnson is not doing that intentionally. He's
Right.
being told to do that if they do that. And that's the thing. Like, I totally get people being frustrated with Mitch Johnson. But, like I said, today, it's like I had the realization that might not, well, if we're not trying to win,
Yeah.
then maybe it does make sense. You know what I mean? That's why he wouldn't be changing the lineups.
For sure. And I'm not a coach. I'm not in the front
Uh-huh.
office. But if I were, and I was told that we're gonna try and silently tank and lose here, my fear would be, one, continuing a culture of losing and being
Yeah.
okay with
Yeah.
losing. Two, sending the wrong message to my players, and two franchise guys, three if you include Stefan and Victor and De'Aaron, and telling them like we don't quite think y'all are good enough to compete, so we're gonna lose again. And then the question becomes, how long are we gonna be okay with that? Because what if next year we roll out and we're still we start the season bad and
Yeah.
we're the 11th seed? Are we gonna be like, all right, one more year of losing? You know what I mean? Like, where does it end? And then the last element of that, like I don't want to get blown out by OKC either. Like that would hurt to watch 4
Uh-huh.
games of us getting dominated. But I kind of like that, dude.
Me too. No, that would be
Victor,
better. That would be better long term for the Spurs.
yeah, one, it's reps, and we don't have to worry
Yeah.
about guys having, being the number 1 seed and getting beaten
Uh-huh.
by the 8th seed, for example. We don't have to worry about that if we lose now. But also, Victor Wembanyama takes things personally. Wouldn't it be the best fuel in his tank to get stomped by a team in his
Yeah.
conference, in his division, with a player like Chet Holmgren who's
Where he already
comparing
has
to
a
him?
rivalry.
I kinda want him to get his ass kicked, because even if he averages 30, 15, and 5 and we lose in
That's because
4,
you're thinking 5 years in the future, Ethan.
I am. I'm thinking about the revenge.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about
Yeah.
2 years from now when we
Yeah.
play them 3 years in a row in the conference finals, and we win every single time because Victor remembers the bad days of getting swept. Like, that's what I'm
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
So, I'm fine with getting the 18th pick over the 10th pick or 9th pick if it means we're actually gonna get those meaningful reps and start taking steps toward being a competitive team again.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that I'll touch on there, and this is another thing I've kind of ruminated on, and I want to say with all of this, this is kind of theory stuff. So, like we said, if there's lineup changes, after the All Star break, then obviously, a lot of the stuff we're talking about may not be the case. So we understand that this is speculative to an
It
extent.
is.
Um, but with that being said, I think there's a chance that this could be a part of the plan too, because you were saying like that culture of losing, right? And when I say part of the plan, I mean like De'Aaron knows this and Wemby knows this. And again, we'll see what happens in these last 30 games, and maybe some stuff happens in that disproves what I'm about to say here. But when I see the body language, like there is a little bit of frustration,
For
but they're
sure.
but they're not that mad, especially De'Aaron.
De'Aaron's totally fine, you're right,
Yeah,
but he's
and
used to that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Victor's mad, but Victor's kind of just also like I feel like especially late in the game when we can't get a rebound, like it feels like he's like there's nothing else I could have done and we're running this lineup, so it's not like we could change anything. Like that's what I read on through a screen. Could be completely wrong. And then with De'Aaron, like I said, this is total conspiracy. We've never really done stuff like this, but we're doing it now. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying it's kind of funny because this really isn't. We don't usually get into this type
No,
of
we
stuff.
don't.
But De'Aaron, I feel like De'Aaron knows too, and he's just like, hey, let's get some reps in, go through this season. I'll get this surgery in the draft. There's a bunch of good bigs. We'll get whether it's the Duke center or somebody else. We'll draft somebody there that'll shore up the backup center position. We can get another guard. Maybe we'll get somebody in free agency, a 3-and-D sniper that can add, and then we'll really be ramped up. We'll have a whole summer to work out together. You see my train of thought here. And then next season, you know what I mean? We'll be set to really go. But again, like you said, as much as there's a lot of appeal to that and you can get excited about that kind of, right?
Mhm.
There's also like, okay, but again, how long are we going to just be like, yeah, we're cool with losing? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and if that's the standard, who's to say that it's just for sure all going to work next year? You know what I
Yep.
mean? We don't have any evidence otherwise to say so. I mean, this year we took a big jump even before De'Aaron got here. So I have faith in that. And at the end of the day, I really do have faith in the Spurs. But man, after that De'Aaron Fox trade, as we saw, we made a video. Our last clip, I think, on our channel is the playoff outlook. Like I really wanted to push for the playoffs, and I still want to. And while through all of this, I see the positives. Like I see the pros of being the 11 seed
Mhm.
and getting that second lottery pick. I really do. But man, I think just after these seasons, Ethan, like you said, we've been doing this podcast for 4 years and we haven't got a playoff race. And with De'Aaron, like we'd have a chance in a playoff game. We would, or play in game, excuse me, and maybe some playoff games. And I know that there's a lot of weaknesses now. If we're running Jeremy Sohan out there at center, maybe we wouldn't have as much of a chance in that play-in game that I'm talking about. But still, it's just been so long. We'd have 2 all-star level players, really 3 if you want to throw in Steph's potential as well. But with De'Aaron and Wemby, you want to see the playoffs, man. That's I'll wrap it up there.
You got to get Chris Paul in the playoffs. You just gotta. This could be his last year. You got to see him one more time when the games count. That's true. Fox a lot was losing 5 years before he finally got somebody to win with him. So.
Yeah, and Floyd Kizzy says this has surely been cleared with Wemby and Fox, the vets too. That's kind of basically what I was getting at, Floyd. Like with the way that De'Aaron, like he doesn't seem like he's like, hey, we're learning, but he's not really pissed at the losses. Like that was kind of what started connecting the dots in my head there, Ethan. But believe it or not, I actually do have a little bit more that I wanted to get to. I know that kind of wraps up that soft tank discussion. But lineup changes. We talked about that. Probably won't happen, but if they do, what are your preferred lineups post All-Star break?
I want De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell. Ooh, actually, you know what? Let me switch it up. Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, Victor Wembanyama. And off the bench, Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Mamu, and Bismack Biyombo.
No Chuck Bass?
Well, he's hurt.
Is he though? He might not be after the All-Star break, genuinely.
If he's back, then Chuck Bass over Bismack for sure. But yeah.
Okay. That was what I was.
A center.
Yeah, a center. All right, got you.
A real center would be most welcome.
So I came up with 2, Ethan. I came up with one that I called my pipe dream, and then I came up with my realistic. So okay. I'll go with my realistic first. And again, this is under the circumstance that we even change the lineups, which may not happen. De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Victor Wembanyama. And then off the bench, Chris Paul, Julian, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, and Bassie. Again, that's my realistic one. That's what I think could happen if they actually change. So let me, that's, people might hear that and be like, I disagree with some stuff. And I'd be like, I understand. Cause that's, like I said, that's my realistic one. If I had the choice, this is what I'd do. This is my pipe dream. De'Aaron Fox, Stephon, Julian, Jeremy, Wemby.
Okay.
Off the bench, CP3, Devin, Keldon, Harrison, Charles.
I think I like that one better, to be honest with you.
I do too. That's why that's my pipe dream. I just don't think they're going to do that one. But here, I'll talk a little bit about my thought process. So obviously, moving Stephon into the starting lineup, moving CP3 down, I think we kind of understand that one, right? Moving Devin to the bench and moving Julian to the starting lineup. Obviously, Stephon can play the 2, and Julian, off-ball shooter, 3-and-D guy, right? Fits right in. Off the bench, you have Devin now as kind of a creator next to Chris Paul, in isolation. So you have those 2 guys, you have 2 of those guys, not just one, kind of like in the starting lineup where you have multiple guys who can create. And then off the bench, you have Keldon and Harrison. And I know people have criticized Harrison's rebounding, but I think putting him next to Keldon can kind of mitigate that. And then, of course, you have Charles at center. And that's why I liked putting Jeremy in the starting lineup, because I think he can help out with Wemby rebounding-wise, but you still have De'Aaron Fox, Julian, and Wemby, for your shooting. And even Stephon, we've seen his shooting improve recently from deep. So I think that can continue to look better also. But yeah, I really like that lineup as well. That's what I'd do if I had full control.
That's better than mine. I honestly forgot about Julian, but we've seen how well he plays in the starting lineup compared to off the bench. I think that fit would be seamless. And then you still have, like the backup backcourt duo of Chris Paul and Devin. and Harrison and Keldon. I think that's an underrated duo that we really haven't seen enough of is Harrison and Keldon. So shout out. That was a really good lineup.
And I think Harrison and Keldon, they kind of like Harrison is a more consistent shooter than Keldon,
For
and
sure.
Keldon is a better rebounder than Harrison. You see so they kind
Yep.
of like their
They
strengths and
complement each other.
weaknesses. Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was a
And
solid thing when I was thinking about it. But there were two more things. I know we're going long here, but they apply to on the court that don't have to do with team defense and rebounding.
mhm.
Wemby and De'Aaron Fox in the two-man game and in the pick and roll. Basically, just what we saw from Devin and Wemby last year, like at the end of the season, kind of come along. I want to see more of that from Victor and De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, I still want us to run sets. We talked about that. That was a big emphasis for both of us going into the season, that we want to have us run orchestrated, organized sets. I still want to see that. But I do want to see that pick and roll, pick and pop, and just that two-man game between Victor and De'Aaron, where it's just like, hey, screw it. Every few possessions, let's just do a pick and roll with Victor, or pick and pop with Victor and De'Aaron. And let's get some buckets going, whether it's a step back jumper for De'Aaron, or a
Mhm.
lob, drive to the rim leading to a fadeaway open three for Wemby on the wing. I just feel like there were some times where I didn't see that as much. Like, I want to get everybody involved, but I want to see that really kind of come to life in these last 30 games.
I would 100% agree with that, especially in the half court. And I would add to that, our pace of play needs to be top 3 in the league for sure, but that starts defensively. We need to get stops, we need to get rebounds, and when you have a guy like De'Aaron Fox and then Chris Paul in the second unit, there's no excuse for why we can't be pushing the pace every
Yeah.
single night and just sprinting up and down the court because we have the youth, we have the expertise in the playmaking. We just have to get some stops and rebounds on the other end.
I think when De'Aaron Fox, like we've already seen in the flashes that he shows how fast he can be. And
Mhm.
obviously we already knew that, but when he imposes his speed,
Yep.
I know impose is usually a word you think of with strength, but when he imposes his speed on the pace of the game, I mean, that can lead to so many easy buckets, and it just puts so much pressure on the defense, and
Yep.
especially in a pick and roll within a generational player like Victor.
For sure.
Okay, I gotta mention this. Spurs Spotlight with Chris. Y'all go check out his content on YouTube. He says Harrison Ingram snubbed from the rotations. I completely agree, especially with the rebounds he's been getting for the G League. Okay, I haven't talked a lot of G League this year, Ethan, but Harrison Ingram, look, we need rebounds. I know he's 6'5", but he's getting double digit boards in the G League. Maybe we need to throw him at the backup center position.
Hey man, I'd prefer him at backup center than Jeremy. Let Jeremy play his position for
Right.
God's sakes.
That might be a better front court, even though Harrison's 6'5".
I know, I know.
Oh my goodness. Okay, last thing. This is like the final last thing that we have here on today's episode. We've talked about this a lot, but I genuinely think it is a key thing. Because we talked about the soft tank, that doesn't mean that I'm going to like let things slide in evaluations. Like, just because if we don't change our lineups, just because that's the case, that doesn't mean I'm going to be like, oh well, just because some guys didn't execute, just kind of like we did the past 2 years. We'll let it slide a little bit because it's not, they're not really trying to win. When you add De'Aaron Fox, like the evaluation when it comes to the execution and the ante being up to, like we talked about when the trade first happened, that still sticks with me.
Hmm.
So I say all that to say that execution from Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson, both guys getting paid 20 million plus. And as much as, Devin has had, he had 2 games where he had 20 plus since the De'Aaron Fox trade. We just got to see more consistency from both of those guys. I think double digits. I mean, they're getting paid 20 million. I know, like we talked about, that's not the same as it was 10 years ago in the NBA, but
Mhm.
still, they're some of our highest paid players. They're some of our most tenured players. And I think at this point, especially with De'Aaron Fox coming in, like we said that night, there's the leash is not as long. We've got to see more consistency from those guys. And if we don't see it, then, we'll have to start, unfortunately, asking maybe if some decisions need to be made about players being better fits than they are potentially. I want them to fit perfectly. Like, I want Devin Vassell to stay here for the next 5 years as an off-ball sniper. I want Keldon Johnson to be, our sixth man, even if he's not the sixth man because we're adding so much talent. I want him to be that physical energizer, culture guy that brings physicality and pumps up his teammates, whether that be on drives or, on ball defense. You know what I mean? Like I want those guys to be those things. But if we're continuing to see, 2 shots on almost 10 attempts consistently, we'll have to start asking some questions.
Aligned.
Any thoughts on Devin or Keldon for yourself?
I would just echo everything that you said.
Gotcha. Spurs Spotlight with Chris. We could use some Dom Beasy right about now.
Rest in peace.
My guy missed a 3-pointer though in the corner that went off the backboard, and then he got the rebound. And this is like late game where they had a chance to. I think they were playing the Celtics, he gets the rebound and he misses the putback.
No.
Oh. Hey, all energy and hustle, no matter what, from my boy Dom Beasy.
Never gives up.
We appreciate all of you guys hanging out with us tonight. We will be gone for a little bit. Ethan is about to have a very fun time on vacation. So I might do some pre-recorded recap videos of some of the games over the weekend. So be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, we will probably not be back until next week. So no post games this week, but we will be back with those next week in all likelihood. So we appreciate all you guys hanging out with us tonight. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like and that subscribe button below. If you want to stay updated with the show, follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Go Spurs, go.